Hey, everybody. I wanted to very quickly continue the momentum in reading chapter 7 and finish up part 2, the second half, because I think this is a critical chapter in the book here, and I wanted to get it out there so you would have it. And if you're listening to these, and I hope so, but I wanted to get it out there quickly. And anyway, so here we go. We're going to start with a section in the middle of the chapter called The Wonderful Counselor. And we'll start there. Shabbat Shalom to those of you who are celebrating Shabbat today at sundown. Here we go. The Wonderful Counselor. None of this was your fault. I was visiting my parents a year ago last summer, and as you well know, that has a way of stirring the pot, bringing all sorts of debris to the surface. For many people, family is like kryptonite. You remember, the one substance that zapped Superman's strength. It seems that no matter how much you've grown, how long we've been away, how far we've traveled in our own journeys, when we go back to family, we're suddenly children again. All the old dynamics, the patterns, the messages, they're all back, trying to pull us down. So you'll understand when I made up some excuse about running to the market for a few things. I simply had to get out of the house, take a drive. I needed some air. I drove to the neighborhood of an old girlfriend, my first girlfriend, who years upon years ago broke my heart. The first cut is the deepest, as the saying goes. It wasn't simply what happened with her that I wanted to remember. Our breakup happened at a time in my life when everything else was coming down around me, like a house of cards. My father's alcoholism, the collapse of my family. When it rains, it pours. I thought I had found, in my first love, a refuge from all that. And I did, for a time. Then she sent me away. For no reason I could find out. All the arrows landed in the same place in my heart. You don't matter. You're not worth fighting for. There's something wrong with you. For years, let me turn my phone down there. Sorry. There we go. A little bit more. For years now, I've lived with the fear that at some point, everyone is going to leave, and I'll be left alone for no reason I can say, and no way I can prevent. I'm going to wind up alone. I can't really explain why, but I know it's my fault. It lingers there, down under the surface, like a chronic backache or a low-grade fever. But it colors everything I say and do, and it shapes every relationship. I remain guarded, distant. I feel I ought to do more, be more. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm sick of it. I parked the car and simply let the tears come, allowed the memories to take me to the place in my heart that was pierced by the loss of those I loved but did not understand in my youth. As Norman MacLean said, somehow being in the old neighborhoods again, smelling all the old familiar smells, hearing the voices of the past, brought this unhealed place to the surface. And Jesus walked softly beside. None of this was your fault. Now, you must understand, I didn't know that for all those years. I believed it was my fault. I didn't think about it much at all. But down in the deep waters of my soul, that conviction that settled, grown like barnacles on a shipwreck, lies clinging to my heart. This all happened because my heart is bad. It's my fault. And down the Spirit went to speak the words to break those lies. None of this was your fault. And something of my heart came free that night. I'm standing before my old high school. It's been 10 years since I touched the door. But to heal the old pain, I must face it again. So I'll walk down that hallway once more. I've come to this 10-year reunion, for my heart is still prisoner of war. That's what I came back here for. David Wilcox, The Last Chance Waltz. Ask God. Peter was one of Jesus' closest friends, one of only 3 invited into his innermost circle. Christ brought him up to the Mount of Transfiguration to see his glory unveiled. Only 2 others got to see this, James and John. The rest of the gang waited at the base. They waited outside the door as well when Christ came in to raise Jairus' daughter from the dead. But Peter got to come in with him. In Gethsemane, at his hour of greatest need, Jesus again took Peter aside, poured his heart out to him. He looked to Peter for strength. 3 years of this, and who knows how many other stories. Peter must have known, I have a special place in Jesus' heart. So how do you suppose Peter felt after he denied Christ? Not just once, but 3 times. It must have been devastating. After the resurrection, Jesus is on the beach with Peter and the others. It's a touching reunion following a night of lousy fishing. Christ yells out to the guys to let their nets down for a catch. Just as he did that morning he first called them. Again, their nets are bursting with the load, just like the good old days. Peter leaps from the boat and swims to Christ. They have breakfast together, reunited, laughing about the catch, relaxed, warmed by the fire, and stuffed from breakfast. Jesus then turns to Peter. He says, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you truly love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The 3rd time, he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the 3rd time. Do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. John 21. What a beautiful story. Notice first that Christ does not let Peter sweep the whole matter under the rug. If this issue isn't addressed, it will haunt the old fisherman for the rest of his life. A nagging guilt will make it hard to pray. That sense of, who are you kidding, will be there every time Peter tries to tell others about Jesus. No, this must be spoken to. Most of us simply try to put things behind us, get past it, forget the pain and as quickly as we can. Really, denial is a favorite method of coping for many Christians, but not with Jesus. He wants truth in the inmost being, and to get to it, and to get it there, he's got to take us into our inmost being. One way he'll do this is by bringing up an old memory. You'll be driving down the road and suddenly remember something from your childhood, or maybe you'll have a dream about a long forgotten person, event, or place. However he brings it up, go with him there. He has something to say to you. Notice also that Jesus asked Peter the penetrating question 3 times, once for every betrayal. Peter's hurt by it all. That's the point. The lessons that have been laid down in pain can be accessed only in pain. Christ must open the wound, not just bandage it over. Sometimes he'll take us there by having an event repeat itself years later, only with new characters in the current situation. We find ourselves overlooked for a job, just as we were overlooked by our parents. Or we experience fear again, just as we felt those lonely nights in our rooms upstairs. These are all invitations to go with him into the deep waters of the heart, uncover the lies buried down there, and bring in the truth that will set us free. Don't just bury it quickly. Ask God what he is wanting to speak to. There are 2 things we need to know, maybe above all else. We need to know that our heart is good and that our heart matters to God. I've found that for most folks, this is what's been most assaulted. This is what we most doubt. We can't just talk ourselves into this. Jesus must show us. He must take us there, as he did with Peter. So ask him. Ask God to show you that your heart is good and that you do matter to him. I recently received this email from a young woman who took my advice. It reads, on Monday, I ventured over to the park for just some time and beauty. The sun was slowly making its way down, and as I watched, my heart just ached to receive what God was whispering. Karen, yes, your heart is good. Ever since you let me come in and dwell there. And I stopped there. It was getting dark and I had things to do, so I made my way back to the car slowly. A few steps later, I heard God say that he wouldn't let me leave without hearing the rest of it. Well, I kept walking until I just couldn't go any further. Dang it! I knew that he wanted to be with me in a place that was not comfortable, was not safe, not in my car where no one could see me. Oh no. It had to be there in a public wilderness. For that was part of the freedom that my heart needed. Release from trying to save face and release from caring so much what people think of me. The lies that killed my heart as a leader in the church. The tears of grief flowed freely down my face. He began to show me, and I let him. I was reminded of all the recurring assaults, and with each arrow, he spoke to me. His shield. You see, Karen, that lie, that was the assault to keep you from connecting. That lie, that one was to make you feel fearful and anxious. That brutal arrow, that was to keep you from glorifying me. Ah, Karen, but in the places where those lies targeted, your heart was good. It is good. As God spoke, I wept. I've so needed to grieve where my heart has been lost. I've needed to find it. I got mad at the lies and strategies that Satan has used on me. Wow, Little did I know that a huge part of the freedom God has been aching for me to experience would come from asking our Abba to show me that my heart is good. I have a number of stories like that as well. They're beautiful and precious to me. It might be one of the hardest and richest things you ever do. Ask God to reveal to you that the new covenant is true. Your heart is good. Your heart matters deeply. The help of others. Now, I was indeed in a pitiful plight. There was literally nothing in the tower but my shadow and me. The walls rose right up to the roof, in which, as I had seen from without, there was one little square opening. This, I now knew, to be the only window the tower possessed. I sat down on the floor in listless wretchedness. More earnestly than ever, I longed for freedom, more drearily than ever. Crept on the next wretched day. I measured by the sunbeams caught through the little window in the trap of my tower how it went by, waiting only for the dreams of night. About noon, as if something foreign to all my senses and all my experiences had suddenly invaded me, yet it was only the voice of a woman singing. My whole frame quivered with joy, surprise, and the sensation of the unforeseen. Like a living soul, like an incarnation of nature, the song entered my prison house. Each tone folded its wings and laid itself like a caressing bird upon my heart. It bathed me like a sea, enwrapped me like a odorous vapor, entered my soul like a long draught of clear spring water, shone upon me like essential sunlight, soothed me like a mother's voice and hand. Hardly knowing what I did, I opened the door. Why I had not done so before, I don't know. At first, I could see no one, but then I forced myself past the tree which grew across the entrance. I saw seated on the ground and leaning against the tree, with her back to my prison, a beautiful woman. She looked up at me and smiled. Ah, were you the prisoner there? I'm very glad I have wiled you out. George MacDonald. I can't even read that. Fantastes. That's weird. Fantastes. I don't know. It's a weird title. I can't say it. Too difficult. I want to be careful lest I have painted the wrong picture here. This stream of counseling doesn't just flow to us directly from Christ, only from him. It flows through other people, other of his people as well. We need others and need them deeply. Yes, the Spirit was sent to be our counselor. Yes, Jesus speaks to us personally, but often he works through another human being. The fact is, we're usually too close to our lives to see what's going on because it's our story we're trying to understand. We sometimes don't know what's true or false, what's real or imagined. We can't see the forest for the trees. It often takes the eyes of someone to whom we can tell our story, bare our souls. The more dire our straits, the more difficult it can be to hear directly from God. In every great story, the hero or heroine must turn to someone older or wiser for the answer to some riddle. Dorothy seeks the wizard. Frodo turns to Gandalf. Neo has Morpheus. And Curdie is helped by the Lady of the Silver Moon. Several years ago, There was a woman who wiled me out of my prison, a prison of my own making. It was in my final year of graduate studies for a degree in counseling. Naturally, I thought by this time I pretty much had it all together. Why, I was about to become a professional counselor. Danger sign number one: pride is so blinding. Her name was Joy, and she was eventually. But first, she had to cut through my facade. As a part of our course requirement, we had to meet with a graduate assistant for an hour each week. This being a Christian program, I thought she would go after my sin. Instead, she went after my glory. No one had ever done that before. Why are you holding back? She asked. I hesitated, stalled. I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You're holding back, playing it safe. I was squirming. Is this what Adam felt as he heard the voice of God coming closer to his hiding place in the bushes? Where are you? Now you're gifted enough to pull it off, make it look like you're engaged with us. But you're running on only 6 cylinders. I know you have 8. Come forward and lead us. It was more than a little unnerving. I'd been seen. I'd been found out. But not as a disappointment, not as a bad heart exposed. Rather, it was my glory that had been seen, and it was being asked for. What do you do with that? Over the course of several months, my whole system of perfectionism so as not to be seen unraveled. Maybe, the thought began to creep in, maybe the world has been wrong about me. The world has been wrong about you. They've hated your glory, just as the evil one hates the glory of God. But we need your gift. Come forth. I began to believe the truth, and it set me free. And the doctrine I knew, kind of. But having a doctrine pass before the mind is not what the Bible means by knowing the truth. It's only when it reaches down deep into the heart that the truth begins to set us free. Just as a key must penetrate a lock to turn it, or as rainfall must saturate the earth down to the roots in order for the garden to grow. Listen to the rest of Abby's story. This was, if you need to go back and review, Abby started sharing her story in part 1 of chapter 7. God has given me a new name, a name that is so perfectly and wondrously opposite of the lie that had controlled so much of my life. And he's healing my heart. A year ago, a wise woman who I deeply respect was praying for me. She heard God call me my sunshine and my delight. Really? Really? My heart responded, sunshine? Not darkness? Not object of my contempt? This was so precious to me, so beyond my wildest hopes for who I was to my God, that I kept it to myself. Over the next several months, 2 friends wrote to me, completely independent of one another, and in the letters they both described that I was like sunshine in their lives. Still, I kept this in my heart. Then my boss, my dear friend, began to call me sunshine. I could barely believe it. And finally, a dear friend saw a painting of a young girl and instantly recognized my face in it. The young girl had a look of confidence and mischief and utter scrutiny in who she was and to whom she belonged. The name of the painting was Jessica of the Sunlight Ranch. God was calling me. God was calling me to believe that truly I was his sunshine and his delight. Calling me to believe that there was something beautiful and valiant that he had placed deep within me, that my husband, my friends, that this world needs, calling me to believe that the effect of my life is goodness and light and life, not darkness and contempt and irritation. And so I've started offering my heart. I've started saying no to the voice of my enemy that calls me to fearfully tone down, edit, control my words and my actions for fear of offending or bringing on rejection and shame. Instead, I've been stepping out. I've been sharing what I see of my God and in my friends, chosen to offer my presence, my heart, and my love, instead of trying to endlessly figure out what else I should offer. I've chosen to believe that I am loved and safe with my God. Behold, you desire truth in the innermost being. Psalm 51. Getting it there is the work of the stream we'll call counseling, receiving God's intimate counsel. I hope you were really blessed by that. That's the end of chapter 7. And tomorrow, the next day, I'll start with chapter 8, which is entitled Deep Restoration. But I hope you heard those words from Abby. And let me read it one more time. She says, I've started saying no to the voice of my enemy that calls me to fearfully tone down, edit, control my words and my actions for fear of offending or bringing on rejection and shame. Shame, by the way, drives people away. Sin, or we'll call it sin. A sin tends to bring people forward to seek forgiveness, where shame drives people away. If I'm shamed, I tend to run away. If I've done something wrong to somebody, I tend to want to come to them to seek forgiveness. And the same is with God. We tend to come to God seeking forgiveness, where the enemy wants to shame us and he wants to drive us away from God. Do you see the paradigm that's being talked about here? Instead, I've been stepping out. I've been sharing what I see of my God and my friends. I've chosen to offer my presence, my heart, and my love, instead of trying to endlessly figure out what else I should offer. I've chosen to believe that I am loved and safe with my God. You're safe with God. He dearly loves you. You have a good heart, and he wants you to come fully alive in him. So think about that. And we'll see you soon, and I'll read chapter 8. Have a great day.